Good day. Today we will discuss about the concept of authentic assessment and how we can contextualize it in science learning education. Commonly, we encounter uh, traditional assessment tools such as quizzes wherein we are expected to give definitive answers based on we have learned from textbooks. Now, this one is an example of a non-traditional assessment tool where instead of asking students definitive answers, they are asked about their perspective in relation to what they have studied already in the class. And this is exactly what the concept of authentic assessment is. Authentic assessment can be described as a non-paper and pencil test. When we say paper and pencil test, we are actually referring to the traditional uh, assessment tools, which are multiple choice quiz, completion test, true or false. So all of these are traditional paper and pencil tests. And reciprocal to this are the authentic assessments. Authentic assessments are expecting that students will give either a product output or a performance task as an evidence that they have learned. And this is somehow connected to the concept of learning outcome. When we say learning outcome, this is what students are expected to demonstrate as an evidence of learning at the end of the learning episode. So in response, to know if we are really achieving the learning outcome, students, instead of giving definitive answers to definitive tests, are required then to produce a product or output or perform a performance that would actually demonstrate what they have learned in the class. Authentic assessment is also described as a holistic approach to evaluate. In a sense, it is being described as holistic because of these three characteristics: evidence, alignment, and real world. Authentic assessment uh, would always foster concrete evidences that learners have really achieved the learning outcome. At the same time, tasks being asked for the learners to do in an authentic assessment is something that is aligned to what is expected from them in the learning outcome or our learning instructional objectives. And lastly, we don't just give assessment in the context of authentic assessment to measure how much they know, but we give authentic assessment to assess also how will they apply these concepts and what would it mean for them in the context of the real world, in the context of what they can become in the future. Now, in the basic ed, there is a concept of performance tasks, which is a form of summative assessment that encapsulates authentic assessment. Commonly, performance tasks or ideally performance tasks can be done through horizontal articulation. When we say horizontal articulation, this is where other subject areas collaborate so that they can ask the student to accomplish one performance task hitting different aspects and different learning areas. When giving a performance task as a form of authentic assessment, the teacher should design it in such a way that students would have a grasp of what they will be doing. Grasp would stand for the goal. What would the student think what they should do and where should it be leading to? What role would they assume? Role would correspond to what you want them to simulate. who will be the audience of what they will be doing, and what situation will they be in when they are doing the performance task, what is expected from them as a product, and how will they be graded as the standards. Example would be like this. The computer subject and the English subject area can just give one performance task where they can collaborate, having one summative assessment, but uh, uh, targeting different learning outcomes of each subject. This would include the various education. For example, the goal is to create a music video which will tell the story about Filipino family values. The goal itself actually manifests the three learning areas. Creating a music video would actually involve computer editing skills. Telling a story would actually involve the English learning area. The Filipino family values which actually involve concepts of the values education. This implies that even in the goal or the grasp of a performance task, the horizontal articulation of subject areas are actually manifested. The role, as you can see, is something that is in the context of real life. They can be a music video director in the future as well. It's something not far from reality. The audience are the classmate and teacher, which will serve and also assume a role of being a televiewer, and the context or the situation that they would actually assume is they are asked by an NGO to direct a music video about the importance of family, which is really not far from reality, which can really happen to them. The product is very clear, and then the standards, how will they be graded? The concepts and objectives, originality, creativity, and visual impact. The standards may vary from one subject area to another, but the tasks could be could be just one for all of the subject areas. So in doing a performance task or authentic assessment, it is imperative that we don't just list the criteria, but we actually list the qualitative description of each corresponding rating. Here's another example. In this performance task, 4 subject areas are in horizontal articulation. The goal of the performance task is to bake pastries, which is under the area of TLE, and to make a one-of-a-kind ice cream using practical cooling system, which is under the area of science, okay, which you can observe some changes in matter. Now, where is the area of arts and economics? If we will continue with the other area of the other aspects of the performance task, they will be serving or simulating the role of an entrepreneur, which actually belongs to the economics learning area, venturing into the pastry and ice cream business with the aim of coming up with something new to the customer's taste. Audience, the consumers who will taste and evaluate the products made by the entrepreneur. So it can be the student and the teacher who would assume again the role of a consumer. Okay, if we would continue reading, the performance task actually culminates into a simulation of a business, a micro entrepreneur business of selling ice cream from production up to selling, which would now involve arts because you have to prepare the materials that you will use in marketing your business. So this is an example of what we did before in chemistry. The students actually did an ice cream. They did and create their booth during the arts time. They planned and did the actual ice cream during the science time. They they plan and uh, uh, did other tasks during the time of their other subject areas as well. Meaning we're giving more time for students to accomplish just one task, but a very comprehensive one, which should target many aspects and many learning areas already. Through this, we are able to give students the the luxury of time to accomplish tasks, and because of that, they are not overwhelmed with many tasks, but not interrelated subject areas. This time it's just one task, but they can see the connection of one subject area to another. This one is another example. Make a jewel necklace which with a design showing the arrangement of electrons of a certain element. The necklace will be used as an accessory if in your upcoming cantata, which is now a collaboration between science and music. And they actually did it. They produced a necklace which corresponds to a unique element, model of an element, and they actually use it in the production of their in their music recital. Now, there are many forms of authentic assessment, as I've shown to you. We can have journals, a written collection of students' reflection. Science concepts are heavily on content, but when students really understand it or really understood it, they can reflect on its implication to the natural world, to the real world. It can also be story or text retelling of main ideas, writing samples, capstone projects, as I've shown in the examples, constructed response items, or responding to open-ended questions, just like putting students in the situation, or putting students in exposing students to controversial issues like human cloning, nuclear energy, and asking them their opinion about it is a type of open-ended question. Teacher observations can also be used as a form of authentic assessment, and oral interviews where students gather data from other people. Portfolios can also be used as a form of authentic assessment. It's the collection of student work so that both the teacher and the student can monitor their progress in a specific learning area. There are three types of portfolio depending on what the purpose is. If the purpose is to identify the strength and weakness of the student over a period of time, you can see the collection of student work and identify what is the strength and weakness based on this series of tasks included in the portfolio. That's a developmental portfolio. If the purpose is to showcase the students' perception of their favorite best work or most important work, it's a best work or display portfolio. If the goal is to document the progress of student from day one up to the specific time of the grading period, that is assessment or evaluation portfolio. So how do we grade products and performances in the context of authentic assessment? Well, the most common type is we use scoring rubrics, and there are two types of scoring rubrics. We have the analytic and the holistic. When we say analytic rubric, this is where a product or a performance is graded on separate criteria, like this one. In this rubric, there are three criteria, and each is graded independently. One task but many criteria, and each criteria is graded independently, and we total it as the score or the total score of the student. This one is holistic rubric, wherein criteria are merged into just one description, and then each description would correspond to a score, meaning there could be many aspects of the work that is being analyzed by the teacher, by the one who will score it, and these aspects are attributed to a particular description. For example, what if we will apply the example a while ago about making pastry using a cooling system applying science concept, right? So if there are many criteria on that activity and we try to merge it, what would it be if it would get 4 in all of these criteria? What would be in general or in summary the description of the output or the product? What would it be if it's 3? What would it be if 2? What would it be if it's 1? So it's like scoring a product or performance, looking into different elements of the criteria, but merging it into summarizing what would it be in general or as a whole if this is the level of output or performance. Now the question is, when do you use holistic and analytic rubric? So if the performance or the product would only make sense if it would be graded as one and not separately in terms of criteria, then it should be holistic rubric. For example, if I ask a student to do a return demonstration of how to do CPR, it would not make sense if I would grade it on separate criteria like timing, posture, and maneuver, right? Because in real life, even if the student passed 2 criteria and failed on one, for example, he passed the timing, he passed the posture, but he failed the maneuver. So it would not make sense if I would grade it separately, these 3 criteria. Why? Because in real life, it would not make sense. If they fail on the posture, or if they fail in just one of this, the patient would still die, right? So there are tasks that would actually make sense if they are viewed not on separate criteria but as a whole, just like my example. So how do we develop rubric? Well, we have to identify the qualities needed to be assessed and evaluated. We have to check again our learning outcome. If the learning outcome states that this is what should be graded, this should be the criteria that is included in our rubric. We should make distinctions between a top and poor level performance so that we can describe what would be the product or performance if it would correspond to 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1. Assign criteria score level and make description of the product and performance for each score level. There are actually online rubric maker that we can use, but it's important that if it's not originally from us, we cite where we get it. So we have the rubystar4teachers.org, and when we score a rubric, it's important that we highlight the good points, but we also emphasize the point of improvements. We match the actual product or performance with the appropriate description and explain in the comments why they get that score. For example, okay, this one is really not a good way to use the rubric. If you will notice, all the comments are positive, but the students is not able to get any perfect score in any criteria. So this does not explain why the student is 4 in all criteria, but the comments do not have any negative points at all. This one, on the other hand, is seemingly more justifiable in the sense that the one criteria is not perfect, but if you read the comments, it's included that there is something that can be improved which corresponds to the criteria of organization. So this is a more logical way of using every grade. So I hope you have learned uh, the the key ideas of authentic assessment, and hopefully you can apply it in making your authentic assessment tool for your chosen subject area.